we now have a pretty good track record of the Shanahan Lynch combo drafting.
Mhm.
It started in 2017 with that disastrous draft of Solomon Thomas over Mahomes and Watson, and then Reuben Foster at the end of round one, followed by Akella Witherspoon, C.J. Beathard, Joe Williams. It wasn't even the best Williams running back in that draft from the state of Utah. They took Joe Williams. I
Wait,
saw it come across the board at
who
the
is the
time.
best state of Utah Williams running back?
Well, it was Jamal Williams.
Oh,
And I saw it come across the board, and I'm like, Jay Williams. Oh, the Niners got Jamal Williams from BYU. I really like that kid. I'd interviewed him before the draft. I'm like, hey, Jamal Williams, that's not bad. And then all of a sudden I'm here, oh no, it's Joe Williams. I'm like, what? But they got Kittle in that draft, and they did get DJ Jones, and that's kind of saved that whole draft. But that was a bad draft. Okay, so then that's 2017. 2018, they reach for McGlinchey at 9 overall. He's a right tackle. And then they go Dante Pettis in round 2, bust. But they did find Fred Warner in the 3rd round.
By the way, draft McGlinchey ahead of Colton Miller.
What's that?
Colton Miller goes after McGlinchey. I think has to be mentioned.
Yeah. Bad draft, though. Another bad draft. Tarvarius Moore, Kentavious Street, DJ Reed got out of there. Marcel Harris, Julian Taylor, Richie James. I mean, what did you get? You got Fred Warner. Good player, but that's basically your entire draft. That was 2018.
Right.
2019 was their best draft, right? They had Bosa and Debo, 1-2. Then they missed on Jalen Hurd in the 3rd round, but they got Wishnowsky. They got Greenlaw in the 5th round. So that wasn't bad. That's a pretty good draft. Bosa, Debo, Greenlaw, Wishnowsky. You got 4 starters, some Pro Bowl caliber players. Then 2020, they make the Buckner trade. They draft Kinlaw. That wasn't a good pick, but they did get Ayuk at 25. They took Colton McKivitz, Charlie Warner, and they got Jawan Jennings in the 7th round. So even though they only had 5 picks, and they missed on the first, it wasn't horrible. Then
Charlie Warner played 65 games. I mean, he played every game basically for 4 years for a 6th round pick. That's pretty good.
That's not bad. Then the 2021 draft is also kind of a circus because they traded up for Trey Lance. Trey Lance became a bust. They did get Aaron Banks out of it. They did get Ambry Thomas out of it. They did get Demo Lenore and Afonga and Elijah Mitchell all on day 3 with Jalen Moore. So that's actually even though Lance was a whiff and Trey Sermon was a 3rd round whiff, they did okay in the rest of that draft. I mean, that's a pretty good rest of the draft. They just whiffed on Lance. And then there's 2022. They have Drake Jackson, to this point a bust. TDP, no longer with them. Danny Gray, this point a bust. Spencer Burford, I don't know what you'd say about him. Womack, I like. They got Nick Sakel. But then, of course, what saves this draft is they got Brock Purdy in the 7th round. So bad draft, but Purdy in the 7th is pretty good.
Yeah. Burford's I mean, if you said in this draft, the Niners are going to get in the 4th round an offensive lineman that plays basically every game for the next 2 years, you'd be like, oh, probably solid. And I'm like, well, but he only plays like half of every game. Like, oh, that's weird. So
and then this last year,
just what I would say about Spencer Burford is like really has served a purpose, but also should not be just anchored at that position. You should be trying to upgrade him as well, or he upgrades himself. But not bad.
He's had a little bit of an inconsistent, football card. I mean, he was good as a rookie. He wasn't as good as a 2nd-year player. We'll see what he is as a 3rd-year player.
Yeah, TBD.
And then this last year, Jair Brown in the 3rd round. They didn't pick till the 3rd round, but they got Jair Brown. They got Jake Moody, Cam Latu, Darrell Luter, Robert Beal, D. Winters, Braden Willis, Ronnie Bell, Jalen Graham. There's some players in there. I like Jalen Graham. I like Luter. Moody's your kicker. Jair Brown's a pretty damn good safety. Whether what position he settles in on, strong or free, we'll see. But I mean, decent draft. But
I don't know.
overall, what
I
would
don't
you,
think so. Larry,
you know,
I think the
you know,
23 draft, it could go either way right now. But if we did kind of trend arrows on every one of the players in that draft, like it's not like two are trending up, Moody and Brown, Jair. Latu's not. Luter, everyone talks about it, but we'll see. Beal. Again, it's early. Like these are fifth. Half of this draft is day 3. More than half of this draft is day 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of the 10 guys. 70% of this draft is Saturday. So it's unfair to them. Like Ronnie Bell, it's been a really good 7th round pick so far for what a 7th round pick is. If a 7th round pick might be one of your top 4 or 5 receivers, that's fine. But we may look. They may get
overall,
right now. It's trending towards 2 starters out of that draft. Which okay.
Should the Niner fans have confidence in Lynch and their drafting? I mean, we don't know how much of that was Adam Peters, how much of that was Lynch, how much of that was Shanahan, how much of that was Rand Carthon, how much of that was, Tariq Ahmad or any of their scouts or whatever. We don't know. We don't know who's banging the table for who. Was it coaches involved? Steve Wilkes, when you watch the video of this last draft, seemed to be really hyped for some of their picks. Like he maybe had a big say in some of the selections. I don't know though that for sure. But I mean, how do you feel about the Niners' ability to draft? Because if you just take their first 2 picks, let's say, in every draft, Solomon Thomas, Reuben Foster, Mike McGlinchey, Dante Pettis, Nick Bosa, Debo Samuel, Javon Kinlaw, Brandon Ayuk, Trey Lance, Aaron Banks, Drake Jackson, Ty Davis Price, Jair Brown, Jake Moody. Do you see what I'm saying there? It's like you got Brown and you got Banks and you got Ayuk, you got Bosa and Debo, and that's it. You got 5. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drafts. And in the first 2 picks, you've got 5 good players. And you had 14 picks in those 7 drafts in the first 2. I don't know. It seems like if they're going to be competitive with these Lions and Packers and all the best teams in the NFC and the teams that are getting better, their hit rate has got to be dialed up a little bit better than what it's been. Well, is that being too critical, or do you think that's
no?
Fair?
I don't think that's critical. I do have confidence in them, but I don't think that's too critical. I also think if we look at like some of those names you just mentioned that didn't work, right? Drake Jackson, Trey Lance, Javon Kinlaw. Those 3 stand out to me as guys who are projected. Well, and Drake, there's still time for him, but he was kind of a let's take a shot on a projection in the 2nd round. It almost feels on a few of these guys. Well, actually, what I was about to say probably wasn't fair, but like it makes you wonder, should they emphasize college productivity with their first pick this year? That's my kind of snap judgment reaction. Should it be an emphasis on college productivity? And if you're saying none of these offensive linemen at 31 are going to plug and play, so you're talking about development, don't love that then, right? Like if they're drafting an offensive lineman at 31, like I want that guy to play. Like I want them to think he's good enough to play now because they need their offensive line to be better. If it's not going to make their offensive line better this year, go somewhere else. Make your team better this year with that first pick. That's because I think that offensive line draft thing I gave you earlier, looking at it yesterday, one of my conclusions was the way you're going to replace Trent Williams is probably just with a real, you might have to spend a ton of money to replace Trent Williams or a ton of draft capital to replace Trent Williams. You may not be replacing him with the 31st pick in the draft or a 2nd or a 3rd round pick, right? That's a hard ask. So maybe that's not what you're trying to do here. You're just trying to plug in a guy that can play, and you'll worry about replacing Trent later, as opposed to let's get a guy, develop him. Maybe he can become Trent. Like that might be too small of a target that you're trying to hit. So that's my take. That's like going through it. My first reaction is maybe you need to emphasize college productivity early. Now, part of this too, right, is like it's tough. All these picks are not equal. Jair Brown was a third rounder. Drake Jackson was 61, like the end of the second round. So they've, sometimes their first picks, they're not top 15 picks. The one that was Kinlaw and McGlinchey. And, Kinlaw was a miss. McGlinchey was a starter on a, Super Bowl team, but not what you would have wanted. So all that said, they do find good players. They do. They've consistently found good players. Just not in the spots necessarily where you think they will.